Chapter 61, Embroiling Innocent Bystanders in Trouble. There was water flowing through an artificial mountain in the Boost Merchant Guild, and the environment was classically elegant and luxurious. A hallway paved with oval stones ran through the entire building. Guards wielding long swords and javelins would walk by periodically. It would seem that the defense of this merchant guild was quite serious. While he had been in Balthazar, Han Shao had sought information about the Boost Merchant Guild. He understood that this guild specialized in trade. To put it simply, the Boost Merchant Guild leveraged the footholds they had in all the merchant guilds in the Empire to purchase resources and materials from all over the Empire and then resold them to places in need, earning their profits from the price margins. This load of weapons and medicines from Dral would definitely be disposed appropriately if handed over to the Boost Merchant Guild. This was why Han Shao had come in search of Fabian. Therefore he was absolutely looking for the right person. After traversing 3 hallways and walking for a few minutes, just as Han Shao was reflecting that this Boost Merchant Guild was quite large, the young miss of the guild stopped outside a loft. Farmer, go get Fabian. Giles, you stand guard at the door. You're called Brian, right? Come with me. The girl looked around a bit when standing before the door to the loft and then issued orders to the 2 strong warriors behind her. Han Shao didn't chatter idly and followed the girl inside after nodding. Soft carpet met his feet and priceless drawing scrolls lined the walls. The room was decorated in an opulent and grand way with a vast chamber inside. A round table was placed in the center and several chairs were placed around the table. The girl found a chair and sat down, then creased her brow without saying a word as if contemplating something. Several strands of brown hair landed on her translucently white clean forehead, setting off her fiercely furrowed brow and beautiful cheeks. She had lost a few traces of the aloof arrogance she'd held earlier and gained a few hints of melancholy. She didn't play host to Han Shao, and he wasn't shy about things either. He spun a chair around and sat down, taking in the room's decorations as if nothing was out of the ordinary, sneaking a few glances at her every now and then. After a short while that fatty Fabian came walking in with a fawning smile on his face. When he'd shut the room door, he quickly strode in and bowed in greeting to the girl. It's so wonderful that Miss Phoebe has returned safely. This person has come to find you and says that he wants to do business with you. I also have to discuss a few things with you, and so I brought him directly here. Phoebe nodded her head and said to Fabian, Hey, so it's Brian. It was thanks to you that I was able to escape from the evil hands of those forest trolls last time in the dark forest. I thought I would never see you again. Who would have thought that you'd come find me a few days after I'd returned to the Empire? What kind of business would you like to do this time? Fabian had plastered on a professional smile and asked Han Shao enthusiastically. I have a load of resources with slightly murky origins. I was wondering if you'd be willing to purchase them off me? Han Shao hadn't planned to say much with Phoebe sitting there, but then he thought for a moment and noticed that even Fabian seemed to follow Phoebe's orders. It looked like there was nothing to hide, and so he spoke candidly. Hey, this is definitely not a problem. Anything dirty that makes its way to our guild will become clean. Don't worry. Fabian turned his head to look at Phoebe in the distance and only responded with a sudden smile after he saw Phoebe nod slightly. Since that was the case, Han Shao had no further need to conceal things and released a tendril of mental strength, withdrawing the 13 bags from the space ring. He spoke after placing them in the room. These are the items. Come have a look and see how much it's worth. Originally sitting there with cold aloofness, Phoebe's eyes swept a sharp gaze in their direction as Han Shao took the items out one by one. She suddenly said, These items come from the town of Dral, don't they? Judging from the bags holding the items, they should be the tools in which the orc wolf riders use in raiding. Have you seized all of these from the hands of the orc wolf riders? Looking at Phoebe in surprise, Han Shao thought privately that this girl's eyes were sharp indeed. She had guessed the particulars of the situation with just one glance. No wonder she was the young miss of the Boost Merchant Guild. Nodding his head, Han Shao didn't conceal this information either. He smiled lightly and said, Correct. I've seized these items from the hands of the orc wolf riders. Phoebe had been wholly uninterested in Han Shao prior to this, but her eyes lit up as soon as he'd finished speaking and she stared intently at him, sizing him up. She then opened her mouth and asked in astonishment, "You mean to say that you were the one who seized all these items from the hands of the orc wolf riders?" Young Miss Bryan is a very strong mage swordsman. "He was the one who single-handedly scared off all the forest trolls who had encircled me and were attacking me," Fabian hastened to explain to Phoebe upon seeing that she seemed to doubt Han Shao-Oh's strength. Phoebe was even more surprised with Fabian's words, and her sharp eyes patrolled over Han Shao-Oh's body. Even Han Shao felt his heart tighten in worry when she looked at him like that, like some of his secrets would be picked up on. Coughing lightly, Han Shao laughed dryly. "I wasn't the only one who seized items from the orc wolf riders, but I'm in charge of them now. I think you guys should know to take inventory and then give me a fair price so we can quickly conclude this matter." "All right, Fabian, take inventory of these items." Phoebe nodded and looked at Han Shao strangely. She didn't seem to anticipate that Han Shao would honestly admit that he hadn't seized these items himself. An exceedingly soft sound suddenly made its way into Han Shao's ears at this moment, like that of a long sword slowly being drawn from its sheath. Han Shao's heart leapt as his expression changed slightly. He raised his head to look at the dim roof and said with a cold face, "Who's on the roof?" Fabian's face immediately changed drastically with his words, but 3 crossbow bolts had already flown towards the 3 of them with an ear-piercing hiss before the former had a chance to react. Han Shao had originally been enraged because he'd thought that Fabian and Phoebe wanted to kill and rob him, but when he saw that the 3 crossbow bolts were shooting towards each of the 3 of them, that was when he realized that that couldn't be the truth. The ear-piercing sound at which the 3 crossbow bolts were slicing through the air with indicated how shockingly high the force and speed behind these bolts were. They were obviously fired by experienced experts. Han Shao's facial expression was uncommonly calm at such a crucial moment like this. He leaned backwards and swiftly dodged the bolt aimed at him. His right hand had already drawn out his dagger as he chopped at the other bolt which had been aimed at Fabian. The bolt that had been aimed at Fabian broke apart with a sharp crack as Han Shao's right hand became abruptly numb under the extreme force of impact. His entire right arm twinged with pain. This allowed Han Shao to understand that the force behind this crossbow bolt was incomparably fierce and vicious. If an ordinary person had been holding the dagger during the impact, his whole right arm would have probably been shattered to bits. Dawn. Phoebe suddenly fled in Han Shao's direction with a face full of panic and fright. The chair she had been sitting on had already been pierced through by the crossbow bolt. The bolt had cleaved through the chair and was directly nailed onto the carpet. There was an even more durable floor beneath the carpet, so it was clear to see just how frighteningly strong this bolt's force was. "Assassins! There are assassins!" Fabian screamed shrilly in this moment and shoved Han Shao hard in Phoebe's direction. He called out urgently, "Bryan, hurry and protect the young miss. As long as you can save our miss, I will pay you an additional 500 gold coins, please." It looked like Fabian knew that Han Shao wasn't the type to play hero and save a damsel in distress. His first thought was to use gold coins to buy off Han Shao in this critical moment. Just as Fabian's shrill scream rang out, 3 sharp cracks sounded from the roof as 3 inky black figures suddenly materialized, and 3 long swords sparkling with dark green light had started cleaving down at Phoebe and Han Shao. That bone-deep chill made Han Shao feel awful, like his flesh had been abraded by the blades of the swords. Dark green fighting aura. This meant that the attackers consisted of 3 senior knights. Han Shao understood that with his strength it would be difficult to fight one senior knight face to face. Facing off against 3 senior knights would likely lead to death. The purpose of the 3 people were obviously to kill everyone in the room. Even if he threw up his hands and retreated now, he would be hard-pressed to escape such a fate. The only way out was to delay things until reinforcements arrived. His magical yuan churning speedily, Han Shao's body suddenly moved. Phoebe had already moved to front of him at this time. Han Shao reached out his hand and grabbed her right hand, pulling her into his embrace. He held Phoebe's body and suddenly fell to the ground, abruptly rolling beneath the round table in the chamber. Pilla sounded violently from the top of the round table. The sturdy round table broke apart into pieces over Han Shao's head. 3 sharp blades shot directly at Han Shao and Phoebe after demolishing the round table. At this moment Han Shao's necromancy incantation was already complete and the bone dagger wielding little skeleton also materialized out of thin air. It rushed directly towards the first assassin. Beneath the table Han Shao lifted his left hand and the crossbow bolt hid in his sleeve shot abruptly at another assassin. Chapter 62. I like this big trouble. Of the 3 long swords that had been about to stab into Han Shao, one of them split off to handle Han Shao's small skeleton. Another changed direction midway to ward off Han Shao's crossbow bolt and the remaining one pierced toward Han Shao. Han Shao pushed out with the hands wrapped around Phoebe and sent Phoebe rolling in Fabian's direction. His right hand clasped tightly around the dagger's handle. Han Shao suddenly rushed out from behind the shattered round table. His magical yuan flowed onto the dagger and drew a pale purple arc in thin air aiming for the longsword that was rushing at him. A metallic sound rang out along with a dull grunt from Han Shao. His dagger-wielding right hand went numb again and the forward momentum of his body was halted. He fell involuntarily down beneath the table as the assassin's body also shuddered and fell onto the shattered table. He had been wielding the sword with his right hand but the collision just now seemed to have frozen his hand through usage of the mystical glacial spellfire from Han Shao's dagger. His longsword suddenly swapped to his left hand and his ice-cold eyes swept over Han Shao. The longsword stabbed forward again and a wave of wild fighting aura flowed into Han Shao's body through his chest, taking advantage when he was off balance. The bone-piercing pain immediately spread throughout Han Shao's entire body. When the dark green fighting aura surged into Han Shao's chest, the magical yuan churned furiously and broke it into thousands, tens of thousands of strands, deathly entangling that cloud of fighting aura, preventing the fighting aura from spreading to other areas. Even so, Han Shao still spurted out a mouthful of fresh blood and he fell down with unsteady steps. The assassin was now full of confidence upon seeing that Han Shao had been filled with fighting aura from his sword. He didn't bother with another glance at Han Shao after seeing he'd been hit and directly turned his back to deal with Phoebe and Fabian, who were on the other side of the room. Except there was no way that he could have realized how durable and strong Han Shao's body was after countless reforging from magic. Add to that the wondrous effects of the magical yuan. What was originally a definitely fatal blow couldn't take Han Shao's life at all. In the moment that he'd turned and was about to leave, Han Shao suddenly sprang up from where he'd fallen on the floor like a ghost. A tenderly frosty light emanated from the dagger in his right hand, abruptly stabbing towards the assassin's back. The assassins were senior knights, all right. He hadn't lost his sense of vigilance even in such a critical moment. He turned his body in that critical crucial moment and the longsword in his left hand once again sent out dark green fighting aura, blocking Han Shao's stabbing dagger with a flame. Except he'd defended against Han Shao's dagger but not Han Shao's sniper shot. The crossbow bolt in his left sleeve shot out and fiercely pierced through the assassin's remote merciless left eye. As he wailed out in agony and reached out his hand to cover his left eye, the dagger in Han Shao's hand moved and a line of blood floated out from the assassin's neck. He fell listlessly but solidly to the ground. At this moment Han Shao's left hand wiped away the fresh blood that was leaking from the corners of his mouth and tightened his grip on the dagger, calmly taking in his surroundings. The little skeleton wielding the bone dagger had actually started fighting one of the assassins. After countless refinements by magical yuan, the little skeleton was so strong that it was almost a bit perverse. The speed of its evasions and dancing bone dagger was extraordinarily high. Even when its body had been hit, the inky black skeleton only wavered slightly. The little skeleton would regain its footing whenever it stumbled backwards and came forward with another attack, making the assassin at his wit's end. On the other side, the assassin who had broken the crossbow bolt that Han Shao had shot towards him had already dashed at Phoebe. Fabian was stricken with panic and fear and hollered frantically, "Be careful, young Miss Brian, help!" Han Shao started and with one glance knew that it was too late to save Phoebe. He sighed lowly and was about to command the little skeleton and find a chance to slip out when something outside his expectations happened. Phoebe's eyes in her panic-stricken face were calm and aloof. When the dark green light from the assassin's sword came crashing down on her, when unbeknownst to anyone a thin long dagger suddenly appeared in her hands. A milky white aura suddenly flared out from the dagger in Phoebe's hands like a blossoming lotus flower. A milky white fighting aura interwove with dazzling sword light, thoroughly swallowing looking up the assassin. A desolate wail sounded. When the dazzling milky white sword light faded away, it was as if the assassin had been pierced by 1,000 sharp weapons. His entire body was pockmarked and blood flowed out from 100 holes. Not only was Han Shao astounded, but even Fabian and the last assassin facing off with the little skeleton was also dumbfounded. It was no big deal if Han Shao and Fabian were shocked, but when a break in the assassin's concentration appeared, his left arm was directly hacked off by the little skeleton. He cried out in agony, and Phoebe suddenly threw out the dagger in her hand. When he was about to escape, the dagger sank into the assassin's waist, and the last screaming assassin abruptly made no sound, falling solidly to the floor. Young miss, you're a swordswoman?" Fabian's mouth had fallen open, greatly tongue-tied as he pointed at the coldly aloof Phoebe. He stammered out his question. Swordsmen were also similarly divided as knights: swordsman apprentice, pale blue fighting aura; swordsman at arms, dark blue fighting aura; journeyman swordsman, pale green fighting aura; senior swordsman, dark green fighting aura; swordmaster, white fighting aura; great swordmaster, silver fighting aura; and divine swordmaster, gold fighting aura. Han Shao also hadn't thought that Phoebe had always been concealing her strength. It looked like Fabian didn't know either. Phoebe was actually a swordswoman at an even higher level than that of a senior knight. With her strength as a swordswoman at her age, it would shock many if news of this was leaked. "Looks like I went to unnecessary effort." Han Shao laughed faintly as he chanted an incantation. The little skeleton wielding a bone dagger standing there blankly suddenly vanished without a trace. "No, without your help I wouldn't have been able to kill all the assassins from Shadow Ghost by myself. I would have been able to defend against them, but I wouldn't have been able to prevent their escape. Therefore your aid was great help to me. I'm very grateful to you." Phoebe glanced at Han Shao and spoke seriously. Phoebe's brow furrowed as she mused deeply. After a moment, suddenly looking oddly at Han Shao, she asked, "Mr. Brian, why didn't I feel any fighting aura from your body when you made a move just now? And if I didn't see incorrectly, you've also trained in necromancy. Except I've never known that a skeletal warrior could have the same battle capabilities as a senior knight. Mr. Brian is truly an amazing person." "What a sharp woman." Han Shao flung a glance at Phoebe and said with an enigmatic tone, "Miss Phoebe has the strength of a swordmaster at such a young age. The truly amazing person here is you. Compared to yourself, I'm just a misfit." "You're too humble," Phoebe responded to Han Shao and didn't ask further. Turning to look at the still shocked and bewildered Fabian, she said softly, "Fabian, take inventory of the items he's brought us. Brian saved us this time, so we must give him a good price." A serious expression appeared on the previously dumbfounded Fabian's face after he heard Phoebe's words. He looked oddly at Phoebe and then at Han Shao, finally lowering his head to count the items on the ground. "Niece Phoebe, my niece Phoebe, are you alright? What's wrong?" A loud exclamation came from afar at this moment, coming closer with a sound of hurrying footsteps. Phoebe's usually aloof face suddenly displayed an expression of hate and disgust. It reverted back to normal in a second, with even the faint trace of a smile on her face. She said harmoniously, "Uncle Grover, I'm fine, thank you for your concern." A band of 5 guards broke down the door with a sinister-looking thin old man in the front. He was wearing luxurious clothes. First swept a look around the room, assessing the situation before displaying an anxious expression. "I've just heard your cries for help and saw from afar that the 2 warriors in front of your door were on the ground. I came as fast as I could. It's good that nothing has happened to you. It must have been your dead father who protected you. I've caused you to be concerned, Uncle. However, it wasn't my dead father who protected me, but that this noble warrior who saved your niece's life. Otherwise your niece's life would have long since been taken by these killers." Phoebe displayed an expression still lingering in fear as she pointed to Han Shao in her explanation. Han Shao watched Phoebe and Grover's conversation with a cold eye and closely observed everything. He'd formed a slight understanding in his heart. He'd also clearly seen the hate and disgust on Phoebe's face earlier. He'd discovered that when Grover had come in, his attention had been placed wholly on the 3 assassins in the chamber first. He'd only expressed his concerns to Phoebe after he'd assessed the situation. This already explained that relations between the 2 were not as harmonious as they appeared on the surface. "Thank you, warrior. I will be sure to reward you well," Grover exclaimed, looking at Han Shao upon hearing Phoebe's words. His eyes continuously raked over Han Shao's body, seeming to want to completely size him up. Uncle, thank you for your good intentions, but Phoebe would like to personally thank him for saving my life. I'm fine now. Uncle is always overworked and overtired for the sake of the Merchant Guild every day. You should go back and rest earlier. Phoebe spoke seriously and bowed as she spoke to Grover. Alright, as long as you're alright. I've been investigating the origins of the killers for you lately. Be at peace, good niece. When I find out who's behind all this, I won't let him off so easily. You must be even more careful in the future. I'll be heading back now. Grover put on a hypocritical show of affection and turned, leading his men out the door. When he reached the door, he suddenly turned and looked at Han Shao. Brave fellow, what's your name? Brian. Han Shao bowed slightly and smiled urbanely as he answered. Nodding, Grover said, Brian, good name. I'll remember you. Grover finally left the room after saying this. I think I've gotten myself into big trouble thanks to your purposeful actions. Miss Phoebe, how do you intend on compensating me? The faint smile on Han Shao's face withered away when Grover left and he stared coldly at Phoebe. Apart from the money for these resources, I will pay you 3,000 gold extra. 3,000 gold is enough to buy quite a few lives. What do you say? Phoebe laughed faintly, speaking softly as a wise and far-sighted light shone in her eyes. Han Shao's heart shuddered as his face became adorned with a smile once more. He spoke in satisfaction. I like this big trouble. Chapter 63. Snobbish base person. Han Shao knew in his heart what 3,000 gold coins meant. This was indeed enough to buy a lot of lives. Even when he understood that he had been inexplicably embroiled into a sticky situation, his original anger was instantaneously crushed by gold coins when Phoebe mentioned the astronomical price of 3,000 gold coins. Don't be happy too early. At this point, I think you can probably guess what's going on without further words from me. The person who's purchased murder and wants Shadow Ghost to kill me is my dear and beloved Uncle Grover. My uncle has wealth that speaks louder than others. There are many skilled talents by his side who can make you die unknowingly. Besides, after the events of today, my uncle is sure to tell Shadow Ghost that you were the one who killed the 3 assassins. Shadow Ghost is a killer organization that is renowned for seeking revenge for the smallest grievances. I think you'll have many troubles ahead of you. Upon seeing Han Shao's satisfied smile, Phoebe thought for a moment and felt that she had to speak up and warn Han Shao. Hey, this has nothing to do with me. When I leave the Boost Merchant Guild, I'll hide myself well. Whether it's Shadow Ghost or your uncle, none of them will be able to find me. It won't be that easy for them to kill me. Han Shao had already thought of these matters when he accepted this matter. After he left the Boost Merchant Guild, he would immediately conceal traces of his movement. After he'd given the gold coins to Fanny, he directly asked for some time off and made use of the transportation matrix hidden within the space ring to train at the Cemetery of Death for some time. He'd be able to avoid Phoebe's troubles in this way. I see I'm at ease then, since you've made plans already. I've pushed everything onto you because I didn't wish to reveal my strength too early. Otherwise, when Shadow Ghost sends even stronger assassins, I would be hard-pressed to handle them even with my strength as a swordmaster. Nodding, Han Shao smiled. I understand. Since you've already paid gold coins for me to be your scapegoat, then I naturally have nothing to say. I have absolutely no interest in the internal affairs of your Boost Merchant Guild. If there's nothing else, can you take inventory of my items? I'll leave after receiving the gold coins. Alright, Fabian, take out the items in his bags and look them over. Fabian had calmed down by now, and upon hearing Phoebe's words immediately walked toward Han Shao's 13 bags and took out the items within the bags one by one, counting them up. He finally said respectfully to Phoebe, Miss, these items should be worth about 4,000 gold. Plus the 3,000 gold I promised you, that makes 7,000 gold in total. Are you satisfied? Phoebe looked at Han Shao remotely and asked. No problem, I think we will still have many opportunities to work together in the future. Except this Boost Merchant Guild doesn't seem to be too safe. Can we switch to a different location next time we do business? Phoebe's black eyebrows creased in a pleasing manner upon hearing Han Shao's words. She nodded afterwards, saying that old things confidants are arranged all throughout the guild. I haven't dared to live here for extended periods of time. The old thing has dared to start something within the guild this time. This means he's becoming emboldened, secure in the knowledge that he has a strong backing. It looks like he must have bribed the others within the guild. Fabian, find me a new place to live. We move out today. I can no longer live within the guild. guild. I will communicate as quickly as possible with the other founding members of the guild. As long as I prove my abilities to do business and obtain the support of the other founding members, we can then carry that whole thing off the stage. No worries, miss, I've thought of this already. I've already found a new place for you to live before you return today. The new residence is on the North Street, the next to the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Many of the Empire's nobles and aristocrats live there. I think even if the Shadow Ghost wanted to run rampant, they would have to think twice before committing any atrocities there. Very good, we move out today then. When that old thing is out of the picture, I will be sure to treat you well. Phoebe nodded with satisfaction and smiled at Fabian. It's my honor to serve you, miss. Fabian shed tears of joy and gratitude as he bowed and took out a card and gave it to Han Shao afterwards. This is our new address. You can come find me if you have any further business. You've saved my life twice, so I will be sure to give you the fairest prices. Give me the crystal card and I'll transfer the 7,000 gold into your account. When Fabian had transferred the 7,000 gold into Han Shao's crystal card and Han Shao had verified that all was in order, he finally nodded in satisfaction and with a slight smile. Since our business is concluded, I'll be on my way now. I'll be sure to find you if there's any more business to be conducted in the future. Farewell to the both of you. Be careful along the way and make sure you're not followed by anyone. Phoebe bore her customary remote expression and suddenly passed on a reminder when Han Shao was about to leave. When Han Shao had left the room, Phoebe finally said huffily in a low voice, "This snobbish base person, where is he from? He grabbed my hand and hugged me but only thought about his gold. He didn't even apologize, damn it." Mississippi. You didn't mention this incident either, and so I thought you didn't mind at all. Fabian smiled with embarrassment upon seeing Phoebe's face change drastically with Han Shao's departure. HMPH. I am a girl who's been educated in the courtesies and graces of nobility. How could I bring up this matter first? I feel that this fellow only has money in his sights. Not only did he not feel the least bit guilty, but he seemed to think that I owed him something. What an incredibly wicked person, Phoebe complained angrily and then took in a breath, asking Fabian with gritted teeth. Right, this person is also quite odd. Where does he come from? Shaking his head with a wry face, Fabian responded, I don't know that either, just that I happened to bump into him in the dark forest. I paid him 200 gold coins to save me from the forest trolls. I gave him our guild's address after he conducted a business transaction with me for the items from the forest trolls. I really don't know anything about him. I see. Notify me if he comes to find you in the future to conduct more business. I'll personally transact with him. Phoebe creased her brow and thought for a moment, clamping her teeth slightly and leaving these instructions with Fabian. Understood, miss. Fabian agreed trustworthily. After walking out from Phoebe's, Han Shao made ample preparations to handle Grover's possible revenge at any time, but perhaps due to the sudden death of the three killers from Shadow Ghost, Grover hadn't had time to make other plans, and so not only did he not run into any motions of revenge along the way, but even the guards he had seen earlier had all vanished without a trace. However, when Han Shao walked out of the Boost Merchant Guild's front door, the two guards he'd cursed at before seemed to have been waiting for Han Shao. When Han Shao appeared, the two of them looked at each other and directly blocked the door. One of them looked at Han Shao wrathfully and asked, "What did you say when you walked in just now?" "I said the two of you are idiots with no eyes." "What about it?" Since he knew that these two were on Grover's side, it wouldn't harm the relationship between him, Fabian, and Phoebe if he pummeled them. Han Shao naturally unceremoniously cursed at them, confident in his knowledge that he had firm backing. "Die!" The two of them shouted angrily and came at Han Shao directly, waving their fists. Laughing coldly, Han Shao's body suddenly dashed forward and arrived in front of them before their punches had landed. His left and right hands pressing down on their chests, the activation of the mystical glacial spellfire and a faint cloud of magical air, respectively tinged purple and red, sank into their chests. Giving way to a long laugh, Han Shao had already taken great strides out before they'd had a chance to react, swiftly leaving the mystical glacial spellfire. Although the two clouds of purple and red magical air wouldn't take their lives, it was enough for the two to be in agony for quite a while. After leaving the Boost Merchant Guild, Han Shao's extraordinary senses allowed him to sense that there seemed to be someone following him. He raised his attention to the highest and weaved rapidly within large streets and small alleyways, constantly changing his directions directions and barreling towards areas with a lot of people. After quite a while, when Han Shao felt that no one was following him, he found a random clothes shop and obtained a new set of clothes. He then hired a carriage and started out in the direction of the academy. Chapter 64, a New Identity. Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Necromancy Major. After the trials of the Dark Forest, the Necromancy Major had obtained rich rewards. The ability of the students to handle matters had also similarly increased. When Fanny talked with the school authorities and displayed the magical creature cores that the Necromancy Major had obtained, she immediately received high compliments from the school headmaster Emma. Emma was a woman who was around 70 years old and majored in space magic. She had long since advanced to the realm of Grand Magus and had once accomplished distinguished achievements for the Empire. Her reputation was quite illustrious within the Empire and she was highly valued by the king. Within the training fields of the Necromancy Major, Emma was wearing a loose-fitting black magic robe, gazing upon the necromancy students and teachers benevolently. She smiled faintly and said, "The Necromancy Major has had a very successful outing in the Dark Forest this time. It's said that you have greatly helped the Empire by destroying so many of the Orcs Wolf Riders. Master Fanny, I hope you lead the Necromancy Major to another level and revive the glory days of yesteryear for necromancy magic. I've agreed to all your requests and the children also need to work hard." "Thank you for your kind attention, Headmaster Emma. I think after this time's outing the students of our Necromancy Major should have understood the importance of strength. I think they'll be even more studious and industrious when studying magic in the future and become competent mages for the Empire, being able to contribute to the Empire earlier." Fanny's face was serious as she gravely promised Emma. "Oh right, Master Fanny, why isn't the fellow that you've continuously complimented here? I'd love to meet this magical creature." Emma looked at Fanny with a smile as she asked gently. "Brian is traveling on some business. I think the headmaster will surely have the chance to meet him in the near future. He is a mage with very high potential. I can guarantee that it won't be long before Brian will become a very strong mage of the Necromancy Major." Emma nodded her head in gratification and smiled. "I look forward to his growth and hope that you will all rally the Necromancy Major to its past glories." After she'd said those words, Emma's body twisted like that of a reflection in water, giving others an exceedingly unrealistic feeling. White light flashed afterwards, upon which Emma vanished without a trace. As an archmage of space magic, Headmaster Emma has already grasped the true meaning of space magic and can directly transfer her body through short distances. "Don't be shocked, everyone," Jean hastened to explain after seeing the students emitted astonished gasps after seeing Emma suddenly vanish. "Amazing magic indeed." Han Shao's voice came from outside the training fields as he strode in shortly after his voice had sounded out. "It's Brian. The headmaster wanted to see you just now. Why didn't you come back earlier?" Lisa immediately exclaimed softly after seeing Han Shao appear. "There will be plenty of chances later. I've already disposed of the resources from the Orc Wolf Riders. I've sold them for a total of 4,000 gold. I took 1,000. You guys can split the rest. Who has a crystal card?" Han Shao didn't waste time with idle chatter after he arrived and immediately opened his mouth to ask. 4,000 gold, oh my gosh. Those resources fetched such a high price. If I'd known they were so valuable, I wouldn't have gone to chase the orcs that ran away. Bach cried out in astonishment as he berated himself with a face full of regret. Even Fanny and Jean had expressions of shock, not to mention Bach. They hadn't seemed to anticipate that this batch of resources would be so valuable. Smiles crept across all the students' faces when they heard there were gold coins to be had, and they all displayed expressions of joy. "I have a crystal card. Here, take it." Fanny directly gave her crystal card to Han Shao after a moment of surprise. Crystal cards could conduct transactions through the mental brand on the cards in addition to the slot located on the card. It was exceedingly convenient. When Han Shao received Fanny's card, he realized that Fanny had already approved the transaction and transferred the 3,000 gold coins from his card into Fanny's card. When Han Shao returned Fanny's crystal card to her, Fanny also gave a card to Han Shao. "This is your new student ID. You're no longer a slave or an errand boy from this day henceforth, but a magic apprentice in the necromancy major of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. You can borrow books from the library with this ID and practice necromancy magic in the training fields, as well as officially attend classes in the necromancy major. The tuition for this year is 50 gold coins, but I've already paid it for you. You can officially make use of all the resources of the necromancy major now. I've also arranged your new quarters. Brian, I hope you can cherish this opportunity and thoroughly leverage your potential to foster and enhance your necromancy magic. Han Shao felt heartfelt great pleasure after accepting the student ID from Fanny's hands. He said to Fanny, many thanks to Master Fanny, I will try very hard in the future. I'd like to go borrow some books from the library now and will take my leave. Please disperse the rest of the gold coins to them. After leaving the training field, Han Shao brought the student ID and traveled to the library. Little Fatty Jack was currently organizing the books in the library and immediately cried out with glee upon seeing Han Shao appear. Oh goodness, Brian, you're finally back. I almost can't recognize you anymore. You're taller and stronger than when you left and even seem to have gotten more handsome. Hey hello Jack. Has Borg and the others bullied you during the time while I was gone? Han Shao was also rather happy to see little Fatty Jack. He dragged Jack to a corner and started questioning him. No, maybe because you taught them a lesson last time they're a lot more well behaved now. Jack chuckled, paused and looked around. He lowered his voice and asked, Brian, did you really give Lisa 3 gold coins to pass on to me? Nodded. Han Shao said with a smile, of course I'm a student of the necromancy major starting from today onward. You didn't believe me when I said I was going to learn magic before. Hey, this is my student ID. Do you believe me now? Oh my gosh, how did you do it? This is too incredible. Jack held Han Shao's student ID and looked at it, emitting a cry of astonishment again. Alright, I'll give you another 50 gold coins. Don't stay here as an errand boy any longer, but you must absolutely be careful and don't let anyone know you have so many gold coins on you. Otherwise you'll be in big trouble. These gold coins will help you live an easy life. If you run into any trouble in the future, you can come find me at the necromancy major. I'll settle things for you. Han Shao took out another 50 gold coins from his space ring and shoved them into Jack's pockets, speaking in a low voice. 50 gold coins, 50 gold coins. Jack sank into a momentary stupor as he listened to the gold coins clink in his pocket. He stood there dumbfounded, continuously muttering to himself, seeming to have forgotten even Han Shao's existence. 50 gold coins was such an enormous sum to Jack that he had never thought of it before. Han Shao could absolutely understand his reaction. He didn't bother responding to him and left Jack with a slight smile. He came alone to the section where necromancy books were kept and selected beginner magics of necromancy, registered it at the door and left. After leaving the library, Han Shao returned to the warehouse, leaving after he stored the other 2 books in his space ring. Han Shao planned on using the transportation matrix within the space ring and headed directly to the cemetery of death for training. Therefore, whether it was the warehouse or the new dorms that Fanny had arranged for him, someone must know about either of them, so it would definitely not be safe to set up the transportation matrix there. After creasing his brow and thinking for a bit, Han Shao directly headed to the mountains behind the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force and walked to the cemetery there. Not only was it quiet there, but people and beasts basically didn't come and go through here. Some of the tombs were even more secluded, and he wouldn't have to worry at all if he set up the transportation matrix there. Arriving at the random tombs on the mountains in the backmost land of the Academy, Han Shao searched for the most isolated tomb and even moved a large piece of rock to the tomb's entrance. He moved the large rock after he went instead, sealing off the tomb entrance. After finishing these tasks, Han Shao took out a candle from his space ring and lit it. He discovered that apart from being a bit damp, the tomb was still relatively clean. The various racks of broken bones on the ground was absolutely not sinister to Han Shao training in necromancy magic, but he rather felt that they were familiar and warm. Tidying up the inside slightly, Han Shao thought carefully and finally summoned out the little skeleton. Using the dagger within the tomb, he cleared a new small area within the tomb. This new area was in the blind spot of the tomb, and Han Shao could only enter it when he turned to the side. Although the space inside was was a bit bigger. It could only contain Han Shao alone, similar to the closet of an ordinary room. Observing everything carefully, Han Shao finally took at the 6 magical sticks when he confirmed that this area was secure enough. He arranged them according to the diagram of the 6-pointed star, standing in the middle of the diagram and activating the matrix with his mental strength. When all was done, white light flashed by and Han Shao opened his eyes to discover that he'd already appeared within the dark forest inside the large magical matrix in the center of the great hall within the mysterious cemetery of death. The mysterious cemetery of death is a country that belongs to me alone in the future. Han Shao gazed around his surroundings and muttered in satisfaction. Chapter 65. A quick way to train. In the vast expanse of the southern reaches of the dark forest near the cemetery of death, there was a raging waterfall that flowed down with grand magnificent momentum into an expansive deep pool below. There was a bubbling stream that ran off the side of the pool and forked into 3 directions. The towering trees by the side of the pool were luxuriantly green, and all sorts of bizarre and exotic large stones could be seen everywhere. Fish could be seen swimming in the clear crystalline pool waters. The silvery sheen of flowing water cascaded down like the Milky Way, concentrating in the pool below and emitting loud roars. The water flowing down like a long river spewed violently, crashing down onto the random rocks below and giving cause to impressive traces of water splashing down on all 4 sides. There was a hard piece of round stone in the corner slightly off to the side of where the waterfall crashed down. A naked person sat on the round stone, and the muscles on his body were evenly fit and full of energy. His legs were crossed as he sat on the round stone, using his body to withstand the violent force of the strong cascade of water. The agitated water currents sounded out with loud pilla sounds when they landed on the surface of his body. His body wavered slightly. The expression on his face was cold as the meridians on his body bulged and pulsed. A faint black light seemed to sparkle over his flesh and skin. This person was naturally Han Shao. After he'd arrived at the cemetery of death, his first order of business was to thoroughly digest the fighting aura that the shadow ghost killers had left in his body. After his magic level ascended from the solid realm to the open passages realm, Han Shao's body had been reforged again. Even the behavior of the fighting aura within his body had also changed. Previously, when he had visited the Boost Merchant Guild, the fighting aura that had cleaved its way into Han Shao's body had always been enclosed by the magical yuan. Han Shao had originally thought that things would proceed as they'd always had, with the magical yuan slowly being absorbed as Han Shao went about his business. However, the truth proved that Han Shao's judgment was wrong. The fighting aura wasn't digested and absorbed by the magical yuan like he had suspected. On the contrary, the magical yuan seemed to be slowly and purposefully loosening its restraints, letting this cloud of fighting aura continuously run rampant within Han Shao's meridians, causing continuous damage to Han Shao's meridians and even breaking a few bones beneath the stress. Logically speaking, this should have been a very painful matter. However, Han Shao astonishingly discovered that the meridians and bones that had been damaged by the fighting aura once again underwent some sort of change. The reforged meridians had become more tensile and widened compared to before, and the magical yuan circulated at a much higher speed here than compared to the other areas of his body. The bones were also similarly much more durable. After understanding this, Han Shao discovered to his great joy that if he continued training at this speed, then according to the rule of magic rebuilding, after a breakthrough, the training speed of the open passages realm would be several times faster than the speed of normal training. Whilst he was remarking with emotion that practicing magic was indeed a path of masochism and death, Han Shao happened upon this waterfall. According to the importance of building up one's body while practicing magic, Han Shao suddenly had the unique thought of utilizing the waterfall's force to practice magic. The truth proved that Han Shao's thought was absolutely correct. Just as Han Shao was using his physical body to withstand the force of the violent waterfall on one hand, while experiencing the pain brought about by the fighting aura wreaking havoc in his meridians on the other, the speed of his magic training progressed at an astonishing pace. The meridians that were ravaged and broken by the fighting aura all became incredibly pervertedly stronger. The force within the center of the waterfall was the greatest. Han Shao had only tried it for a brief moment before seeing stars from the enormous force. He held on for 3 seconds before almost fainting dead away. In his resignation, he could only rely on a corner to train in which the waterfall wasn't too violent, hoping that once his physical body was strengthened and he would be able to stand in the most wildly raging center to withstand the largest amount of the waterfall's force. He caught fish to bake a meal when he was hungry and used the rest of his time to practice magic. After who knew how long, Han Sha-O suddenly realized that the training speed of the open passages realm had slowed down again after the fighting aura that the assassin had left in his body had disappeared completely. Looks like I need to think of another way to hurry and break through the open passages realm. It doesn't seem to be the thing to do in order to keep training so slowly, Han Sha-O muttered to himself as his body was as agile as a large fish flying through the pool beneath the waterfall. His two hands probed out like lightning in the pool, grabbing two strange-looking fish. He swam back to shore, put his clothes back on and took out his fire-starting implements to bake the fish. When Han Sha-O had eaten his fill and planned on returning back to the cemetery of death, his ears heard the faint sounds of footsteps. Han Sha-O's senses were now more and more perceptive. He focused his concentration and then shot swiftly towards the origin of the sound. There was danger lurking in every corner of the dark forest. Not only were there high-level magic creatures, all sorts of exotic races and numerous adventurers on exploration. Han Sha-O had even seen a silvery long dragon one day flying to an even deeper portion of the southern region of the dark forest. Dragons were the mightiest existence in this world. Legends said that their bodies were as tough as iron rocks and their mastery of incredibly powerful magic was high. It was an exceedingly strong advanced magical creature that was a level higher than a level 1 magic creature. Every dragon boasted of unparalleled power, and the appearance of a dragon often meant that treasure existed nearby. Every warrior that could slay a dragon received the respect and admiration of all. Of course, with Han Sha-O's current strength, he wouldn't be so foolish as to go be some dragon slayer, but the appearance of the silver long dragon had alerted Han Sha-O to the fact that an even more frightening region existed deeper within the dark forest. After a while, Han Sha-O arrived at the scene where the sounds had originated. After he'd taken in his surroundings, Han Sha-O smiled involuntarily. Who would have thought he'd run into familiar faces here? 10 swarthy dwarves with long braided mustaches standing only a meter tall were wielding iron hammers, pickaxes and spades used for mining ore, and using them to fight against 30 or so forest trolls. 2 dwarves had already been hit by long spears and lay on the ground dead. The dwarves were all flushed red. Although they knew they wouldn't win against their enemies, none of them retreated and fled. They all stayed where they were doing battle against the forest trolls. Han Sha-O no longer professed complete ignorance of the wondrous races of the profound continent. Dwarves possessed extraordinary beer brewing abilities and were even more adept at forging weapons. Their personalities were conservative and valued beer as much as they valued their lives. Their temper was stubborn and fiery, but once someone gained their friendship, their generosity would know no bounds. Looking at the dwarves still raising their hammers and pickaxes, hollering and shouting bravely, wholly unafraid of death, even though they were no match for the forest trolls, Han Sha-O actually felt a bit kindly disposed towards these dwarves. Han Sha-O also thought that the 2 areas in which dwarves were proficient in may be of some use to him, so he only thought for a brief moment before suddenly rushing out, slashing quickly with the dagger in his hand, resulting in the fall of one of the forest trolls. When Han Sha-O was standing between the forest trolls and the dwarves and had summoned the little skeleton after chanting an incantation, the green face of the forest troll leader turned very ugly indeed, fearfully calling out that evil human has brought the demon back. Retreat, retreat. These forest trolls were obviously very afraid of the little skeleton with 7 bone spurs on its back. As soon as they saw the dagger-wielding little skeleton appear, they actually broke up in an uproar under direct orders of the forest troll leader. Mighty warrior Ibennett, thank you for your help. After the forest trolls had left, one of the strongest dwarves who wielded a metal hammer raised it in the manner of the trolls to express his gratitude. Not a problem. I very much admire your staunch fighting spirit. Right, why were these forest trolls attacking you? Han Sha-O spread out his hands and spoke with humility and politeness. Hua, those greedy scoundrels are robbers. They never put themselves to work and only think of how to rob others. They wanted us to forge weapons for them for free so that their pillaging would go more smoothly. We refused their request, and those dastardly robbers harassed us endlessly and killed our kin. Bennett blew out his mustache and said huffily. Nodding, Han Sha-O added, so that's the case. They once wanted to rob my merchant caravan. These dastardly scoundrels are evil indeed. Noble warrior, you've saved us. We want to use fine beer to express our gratitude. Please follow us back to our village." Bennett looked at Han Shao as he expressed an invitation out of friendliness.